workspace setup. So before we start tattooing, we have to prepare our workspace, our work spot, our contaminated area, how we call it. That is where you work in, where you want to have everything what touches the client, the tattooing, your hands need to be covered. So we start with very first covering our bench and covering our table. So we have some surface to work on and to build up all the other stuff. So for the bench, I recommend you the clinch wrap and just like wrap that baby as good as possible. And even when you work on the top, I honestly don't like to just put like somewhere a little thing. It's always good to just wrap the full bench. The clients lie on it, maybe they start sweating, maybe they have dirty clothing, maybe they have their shoes on, and so on. So it's just the most hygienic and safe way for everyone, for all your other clients and for your stuff. So, and the clinch wrap you get in every supermarket, convenience store, everywhere. So that should not be an issue. For the table, we kind of use this thingies here to get in every medical supply store. Or what is this here for, like medical supply stuff?
Yeah, or tattoo shops or anywhere.
Yeah, tattoo
like
shops.
One side plastic, one side kind of paper.
Yes, probably you get on eBay or Amazon even. I think it's like a super standard thing. It's kind of paper-like stuff on one side and there's a plastic on the other side, so nothing will go through. It's pretty much like a plastic. You also could use clinch wrap for this, but this one I like. It have a little bit a more grippy feeling, more soaky feeling, so in case there comes some color or some liquid on it, it will just soak in, it not go through, but it will not be just like super slippery. Like a clinch wrap, when there would be color on it, everything would get really messy. While this is kind of soaking it up a little bit and make the chances that you make a really big mess a little bit smaller. So I just tape this on our table. Usually we have them a little longer so we can like fold them around. So this is very convenient because later when you want to grab it, we can grab the side, we can move the table without that we actually touch the table. And as I told you before, we really want to avoid any kind of cross-contamination. So always start with the bottom. So now we can have all our other stuff and we can just throw it on the light and see what all we need. We need a tattoo gun, we need a needle. So I usually start with setting up the machine, because right now that is the most, I would say, sensitive part of the tattoo, the needle and everything who comes directly on the skin. So I like to set this the very first, where like I know I not touched anything else, everything is safe and clean. When it comes to setting up the machine and the needle, I will show you how this is done. Because this will have a direct influence of the tattooing, and for this it's also the only part where you need some extra tools. So usually this part of the needle have to go in the top amateur bar, and mostly the amateur bars are always a little bit more fat, so you kind of have to open it, and this we make with this ring opener clamp. And sometimes in case you open it a little bit too wide, we have the clamp to close it. Sometimes also you can open it a little wider, put it on and squeeze it a little bit more together. The very first thing to understand is that you have the needle. It doesn't matter if it's a Magnum or it's a shader or a liner or anything, if it's short or long tape, whatever needle it is, they all are pretty the same. You have the group of needles and on top you have the long stick. So the long stick is always on top. On top means it's to the front of the machine. So that when you have the rubber on, the rubber which we put here on, it presses the needle to the machine. So that means it presses the needle more to the grip. So think about, this is the grip inside here and you want to have the pressure down to the back of the machine. So that's why you not want it that way, because you want to have the maximum pressure to the front. What we also will do, we make a little bit bend. We bend a little bit the needle, so we even have this more. So we will make a little bit bend here, and I will usually bend the front also a teeny little bit and make a little bend of the full needle. So you see we have now a bend in that direction, like a bow almost. So when we will put our rubber on it, it will really presses it down. And this we do because our grip, you see this is now a diamond grip. It doesn't matter when it's a magnum grip. As example, the magnum grips are open, so you always have the longer version of the grip in the back. That means the needle get pressed from the front to the back. And that's why we make the bend in the needle. So the same is with the liners. They are also straight liners. It doesn't matter if it's this kind of diamond shape, if it's a little bit shifted. You always have usually the hole or the opening in the front. So that is where you can see on the needle, and that is where you want to have the long stick before the needle groove. So as you can see here now, it comes in like this. So in that moment we put the tension on the grip, we will have the needle get pressed to the back of it, and that is where it belongs. So, and as you can see now, we put it in first a little bit. I usually put it a little bit more in the back, and then I will take care of opening up the needle a little bit. So it fits on the nipple of the amateur bar. And you see now it fits perfect. I kind of like to use that clamp to like really tight it on. Squeeze it a little bit more together, press it on. This you also can do with a knife or scissor or something else. You don't really need these professional tools, but they are like very cheap and the best for it. So now we will just move the tip to the very front. For this we will let the needle stuck out a little bit. An easy trick to see how far you want to have the needle out after you already set up your machine, like we will speak about before a little bit. You just press on the amateur bar and then you see how much the needle stucks out. I kind of aim for around 2 millimeter, roughly. Then I tie it up. Then I let it go. And now this is usually how much I let the needle stick out, so you can just press in the back and you see how much the needle stick out. This is something you maybe have to adjust while tattooing, but it's not a problem. You can just open and go a little bit up and down. While all the settings on the machine you probably not touch while tattooing. The only thing is sometimes you have the feeling the needle need to be a little bit more out or a little bit more in. So the next step after this, we will take our rubber gums, and when you not have them on the machine, take some new ones. But when you have them on the machine, you can just put them to the top, like this, when you take everything down, and you can reuse them the next time. You don't need every time new ones. Just have a feeling of how much tension you want to the back. It depends also on the machines and on the rubber gums. I usually have two like this. And I try to have them a little bit more in the bottom part of the needle. So now what it does is it takes my machine, it takes my needle and it presses the bottom to to the bottom of the diamond grip, as you see. So that means when you tattoo, you see I put it to the front, I let it go and it jumped to the back. And this is because of the rubber. So that means it's always tight in place and it's not jumping around. I personally like to have always the tips a little bit bigger. There exists a lot of different tips on grips and holders, and some they are like use them perfectly right. But the thing is, sometimes the needles itself have a little bit different size. So even when you buy a box of really good expensive 9-liners, sometimes the grouping is a little bit off, and when you have a grip tip with just perfect fitting, sometimes it can like stuck a little bit. Also sometimes from the bending it can also stuck a little bit. So I personally prefer to have a bigger diamond tip in the front and then have a little bit more bend. Like this, I know the needle is perfectly in the front. Also the opening of the tip makes it more easy for me to see where my needle comes out, compared to like a closed round one. So I see exactly where the needle comes out. It gives me a nice visual feeling, and it's also simpler because you don't need like 10 different tips. We have one big one and it works for almost everything, and that's it. When it comes to the magnums, you will need a tip for every size of the magnum, because the bigger the magnums, the more they go to the wide. And here you really want to have tips where the magnum sit in perfectly. It not is loose, because when it's loose, then it's like kind of, you have to think this is the tip. So when you have the magnum who fits in the tip and you go with your tip left and right, the needle goes left and right. But when it would be a little bit wider, you go left and right. You have this little loose room, who makes it a lot more difficult to tattoo and have a control over your needle. While on the diamond you don't have to worry, because of the rubber gum, it stucks in anyway in the bottom. And as you see, the diamond have like this shape in the bottom, and the needle goes to the bottom, so there will be not a losing around, and it doesn't matter what size, it will be always in the bottom. So that's why I really prefer the diamond tips to like normal round ones. And this can really be big, so you don't have to like buy a ton of gear, and you are very flexible. So the next step on the machine is that we want to protect our machine. So for this you have to use like this little machine bags. I usually open with my finger a hole. Then I take the machine, hold them here, and I press the armature bar back, because now the needle is inside. So we don't have to worry that we stuck somewhere in the plastic, or that there would be parts of the plastic stuck in the needle and we later tattoo with it. I get over, I let it go. I put it over the machine. And covering the machine is really important, because it's very close to the body. It get touched. You sometimes change here, sometimes something, you put it to the side. So you touch the machine no matter what. The machine is always in a very contaminated area. You put the machine on the side, down, or lie it down somewhere. You lie it on a contaminated surface. So you really want it down. I personally like to tape it a little bit, because this is very loose. It really annoys me while tattooing, so I just take a little bit of normal tape, paper tape. I put this here around, and you see I have a perfectly fitting bag. There exist smaller bags, but then you have different forms of different machines, and sometimes it's very tight. I prefer to have a bigger bag. I tape the bag, and you see that there's like, it holds perfect. It's absolutely good. So the next thing what you want to cover is your cable, because the cable is always rubbing over the skin and on the body. So we take in the cable, and there are a lot of different bags for the cable. Just make sure you get a long enough one. Better it's longer than shorter, because sometimes I see this like 15 centimeter long things, and you kind of, sometimes you hit something, but you see this is so long, I can work everywhere, everything is covered and safe. Here we do pretty much the same thing. We take a little bit of tape. And when you have a clip cord, that's a different way to make it, because the clip cord will hold it by itself. But for the cinch, we will just tape it. And this, it holds. Also, I tape it to the very front, so when I change the machines in between, that's why I also like the cinch a little bit more. You can just like change the cable and the machines without that you have to touch anything. So I put the machine on my table on the side. We take our spray bottle. For the spray bottle, I take this normal plastic bags from the supermarket. You also could take some clinch wrap or anything what it covers and just cover the spray bottle. So you can use some clinch wrap for the bottom, a bigger bag, or use a second bag, but whatever you make, you want to cover also the bottom, because we speak about cross-contamination. And think about, you put dirty stuff here on the table, and then you put the bottle there, and the surface will touch the bottom. And then this will be contaminated, and we don't want this. So we really make sure it's fully covered. Everything where we spray, we can grab it and spray. That is safe. So the next set of setting up will be, we have a shaver we maybe need. It's a one-way thing we can throw away, so we don't have to worry about this. A lot of tattooists, they put their caps just like on the table, what is absolutely fine and works too. Just it's the same process. You use some Vaseline and you glue it. We personally like this sausage holders or what it is out of papers, because when you say you work with multiple colors, you can make like the light colors on one side, the black colors on the other side, and then sometimes, you know, you can just turn the full thing. You're flexible. Sometimes it's nice to, you work here on the bench, you don't need a table, you can just take this from the table, you can put it next where you work, so you're a little bit more flexible. Also, I like, in the case you drip color or something, it's here on it, it's like not can run over, like it not makes such a big mess than here. So that means my table, what I have on the side, it's always a little bit more cleaner. So I use a little spatula and I take a little bit of Vaseline. The Vaseline we use a little bit for tattooing sometimes. We use for the after the tattoo, but we also use to just take a little bit of Vaseline, put it on our cups. So the cups, they just stuck on the paper, and you see they just hold there, so you don't have to worry that you like fold them over and then there will be a big mess or something. They are pretty safe like this. So then at this point we would fill our color, because we didn't have touched any customers or anything yet. It's a good part where you can fill up the colors. Make sure that you know what you need before. Don't use too much color, because then you waste it. You always can refill this. Just make sure that you change your gloves and that you don't touch anything. So no, it doesn't matter so much, but later on in the tattoo session, you really want to be sure that you really come from the top and you keep some distance to the cup when you refill while the session. So another thing what we need is tissues. We don't like to have a tissue like this and in the session grab it, because you will contaminate the full thing. So what we do is we wrap a lot of tissues before, and you can pretty much always say you just wrap a full roll and then you put it to the side. When you use a lot, we have the special trick. You can just roll some more. So then you grab the full thing and you see you're stocked up for quite some sessions. Just make sure that you put this now out of your contaminated area. In that case, we put it like on the sides. And while we tattoo, I usually like to have a little bit of a storage of them on my table. But as I mentioned before, you don't want to have too much there, because it can be that you finish with the tattoo, there's still a lot and you will have to throw it off. So let's take some color. It's always important that you shake the colors very, very well before you use them. I always use a fresh tissue no matter what to open the ink, clean it up a little bit in the front and just fill and also close it like this again. So, and as you see, we made a little bit of mess while filling, because it doesn't matter so much when you drop on the next to it, especially not when you have this little paper thing, but it's more important that you really stay away from the cup, that you don't touch the cup with the bottle. And as you see, no matter where we would tattoo, we are really solid with this, so I kind of like it, but it's no problem to use clinch wrap on the table and put it directly on the table or anything like this. Just make sure nothing from here will come on the table and contaminate something. In the case you have not a good light setup like here, and you have a light you have to bend or something, then just wrap the full light. But it's maybe better to just hang up 2 or 3 proper lights, or use a headlight, because you always see something and you don't have to worry much about moving around the light. Especially sometimes on the tattooing you change your position, because it depends on what you make. So then it's anyway better to have either a real proper light, or you will have a headlight on it. And in case you have a headlight, make sure you never touch the headlight with your contaminated gloves or something. Just also make it on before. And in case you have to change something on the headlight, then take your gloves off and make it. With the gloves, I recommend to have gloves somewhere like close by. We have it directly mounted under the table here, but you can just have it next to it on the table or something, just somewhere where you can reach it all the time. What kind of gloves you use, it depends on your feelings. I personally like the latex gloves. And in my time as a tattooist, I had maybe 2 customers who have a latex allergy, when I had to switch then for the session to nitrile. But usually the people, they will tell you before when they have a latex allergy, because they know, and they will ask what kind of gloves you wear and tell you before. But when you like more other kind of gloves, it really absolutely don't matter, as long as you protect your hands and you find something what feels good for you and what is easy to change, because it's more important that you change a lot of gloves instead of making risky stuff, because it's too much hassle for you to change them. So in case you use markers and you paint on the humans, especially when you tattoo and you have to paint something in between, think about these are contaminated. So the same when you touch them with your dirty gloves or something, and in case they are contaminated, make sure that you don't have them on the table. Just drop them on your contaminated area, and you know that everything what is in the contaminated area have to be either fully wrapped or it will be thrown away. One last thing, I think, in case you want to change something on your power supply while the tattoo session, then you also have to wrap your power supply, or you take off your gloves all the time. But most tattooists I know would change something, they just wrap it. It's not a problem, as long also the power supply is wrapped and packed. You can also like make adjustments on your electric and on the settings of that while the tattooing. And for anything else, whoever touches the body, touches the surface of your contaminated area, make sure it's wrapped or throw it away.